The story begins in a crowded cafe on a rainy morning. The air smelled of roasted coffee beans and wet earth, and through the glass windows, people rushed by with umbrellas. At a corner table, a man in his late 30s sat hunched over a notebook. His clothes were simple, worn but clean. He was a single dad named Daniel, and sitting across from him was his little daughter, Lily, barely 8 years old, coloring quietly on a piece of paper. Daniel wasn't the kind of man who stood out in a crowd. He looked ordinary, just another tired face trying to survive in a world that didn't always reward effort. Yet, hidden behind his calm smile was a gift few knew about. Daniel could speak 9 languages fluently, a skill he had built while working odd jobs across different countries. But in his current life, as a janitor struggling to provide for his daughter, that talent seemed like a forgotten treasure. That morning, fate brought someone unexpected into the cafe. A billionaire businessman, Richard Vaughn, owner of one of the biggest international corporations, walked in with his team. He was polished, powerful, and used to being admired wherever he went. The cafe buzzed with whispers as people recognized him. Daniel, however, barely looked up. Richard's team occupied the large table next to Daniel. They spoke loudly, switching between English, French, and Mandarin, trying to finalize an international deal. But despite their confidence, they kept fumbling with translations, mixing phrases, and missing key cultural nuances. Daniel couldn't help but notice, it was painfully obvious to someone like him. Lily, innocent and curious, suddenly leaned over and whispered loudly, "Daddy, they're saying the wrong words." Richard glanced over, irritated, and smirked when he saw Daniel. "Do you understand what we're talking about?" he asked, his tone half mocking. Daniel smiled faintly. "Yes," he replied. "Actually, I understand all of it." The billionaire raised an eyebrow, amused. "Really? And how many languages do you speak, then?" Daniel looked at his daughter with pride before answering, 9. The table erupted in laughter. Richard leaned back, shaking his head. 9 languages? And yet here you are, what, scribbling notes in a cafe? If you were that talented, you wouldn't be stuck cleaning floors. Daniel didn't flinch at the insult. He simply said, "Sometimes life doesn't give you choices. But talent never disappears." His calm tone silenced the laughter for a brief moment, then, as if the universe wanted to prove his words, a sudden commotion broke out. One of Richard's international clients arrived, an elderly Japanese businessman who spoke little English. The billionaire's translator stuttered, failing to communicate properly. Tension rose, the deal was slipping through their fingers.
That was when Daniel stood up. In fluent Japanese, he greeted the man with perfect respect and cultural nuance. The businessman's face lit up with surprise and relief. Daniel then switched seamlessly into Mandarin, addressing another partner at the table, before moving to Spanish, German, Russian, Arabic, and more effortlessly connecting everyone at the table like a bridge. The cafe went silent as they watched this ordinary janitor transform into someone extraordinary. Within minutes, what had seemed like a failed negotiation turned into laughter, understanding, and a signed agreement. The billionaire sat frozen, his arrogance crumbling as he watched Daniel command the room in ways money couldn't buy. When it was over, the Japanese businessman bowed to Daniel and said, "You have a rare gift. People like you are not janitors, you are treasures." Richard finally spoke, his voice lower, almost humbled. "Why haven't you worked for someone like me before?" Daniel looked at Lily, who was now smiling brightly at her father. "Because I promised my daughter I'd always be there for her. Most jobs that need my skills would have taken me away from her. And she's the reason I fight every day." The billionaire fell silent. For the first time, he saw beyond Daniel's worn clothes and saw the man's dignity, sacrifice, and love. Money could build skyscrapers, but it couldn't build character like that. Later, Richard personally offered Daniel a high-ranking position in his company, one that would allow him to use his skills without sacrificing time with Lily. At first, Daniel hesitated, afraid it might mean breaking his promise. But Richard, changed by the encounter, promised flexible terms so Daniel could balance work and fatherhood. The story didn't just end with a job, it ended with a lesson. In a world that often judges by appearances, Daniel proved that true worth isn't measured by wealth or status, but by resilience, love, and the courage to hold on to one's values. As Daniel and Lily left the cafe that day, she held his hand tightly and whispered, "I'm proud of you, Daddy." He smiled, his heart full, knowing that was the only recognition he truly needed. So, if you're watching this, remember, never underestimate the quiet ones, the ordinary-looking people, because sometimes the most extraordinary stories are hidden in the simplest lives. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because every story we share here is meant to inspire you to see life with new eyes.